Hi and welcome back to Writer's Blocks. I'm Lee and today I have a recent read / wrap up for you. I'm going to do 7 books. I know it's a bit of an odd number. I picked 7 because I think these are all books I've not talked about before. Overall, I liked most of them. So out of the 7, there was 1 5-star, 4 4-stars, 1 3-star and 1 1-star. The one that was a 5-star is probably going to end up being in one of my favourite books of the year, and the one that was a 1-star is probably going to be one of my most hated books of the year. So the first one I read was Along the Saltway Sea by A. Deborah Baker, which is actually Shannon Maguire. This is the second book in the Woodward series, the first book being Over the Woodward Wall, which is a companion middle grade series to Middle Game. So this follows Zib and Avery as they stumble across this magical world and they have to find a way home. This one I gave a 4-star, but it's kind of like a low 4-star. I really liked the first book, Over the Woodward Wall. This one I didn't like quite as much, because I rate by quartile system, which is what Book Roast does, which is characters, atmosphere, writing, plot, intrigue, logic, and enjoyment. Because I already had read the first book, I already knew I really liked the atmosphere, I really liked the characters and all that, so they all got high ratings. The bad ratings were the plot, because this book doesn't have that much happening in it. There is very little plot progression in there, and there is very little character development in there. The first book has a lot of character development and has a lot of different events going throughout the plot, and it's all quite fast paced, which is normal for a middle grade. This one has very little happen in it, and even the world building, there's a lot of world building in the first book. This book, it's not expanded on until the last 20 pages. So the book kind of felt like it was the whole purpose of the book was just for those last 20 pages when we found out a bit more about the world. The rest of it was kind of pointless. So overall, it might seem like I really hated this book, but I still gave it a 4 stars, even though it probably be more like a 3.75, because I still liked the writing and I still liked the characters and I still liked the world and the atmosphere. It felt very much Middle Book Syndrome, and it was a filler episode kind of thing. The next book I read was You by Carolyn Kepnes. Everyone who reads this always rates it really high, and they always talk about how, despite the fact that Joe's actions are despicable and he's a horrible person, the way it's written is that you end up relating to Joe and actually siding with him and rooting for him. And that I've seen a lot of people say that even though they obviously don't agree with his decisions, they understand his thought process and they relate to his thought process, and that's how they think. And I read this now and I'm like, how? What the hell is wrong with you people? I think you need therapy. I don't understand how people who aren't obsessive, compulsive, and stalkers could possibly think the way he thinks is a healthy and relatable way to think in a normal thought process. I am shocked that people find him relatable. I've also sort of noticed that the actor in the TV show, he's shocked that people find him relatable. He's really confused, which I understand. I don't get it. Another thing is that in terms of the book itself, I didn't find it as creepy as I was expecting, because I've heard people, I listened to the audiobook and I've heard that because it's read in second person, so it's as Joe's saying, you are in the window, you're doing this, it sounds like he's stalking you. I didn't get that. It felt, maybe it was the audiobook I read, maybe there's different versions of it, but this narrator, they did a decent job, but it didn't feel creepy at all to me. There wasn't anything overly shocking in his actions. It was just seeing as you know he's going into the book that he's a stalker, his actions don't seem that extreme. Obviously they are, but in relation to the fact that you already know he's a stalker, it's not shocking that he does these things. I did rate it 4 stars because it is a very good book, and the way the author managed to get into the head of a mind space of someone like this was very good. It was very believable, as that's what stalkers and these kind of people do think like. But I did not like it enough to watch the TV show or continue on with the series. The next book I read was the latest installment in Monstrous by Marjorie Olo. This was volume 6, The Vow. I can't tell if it was my fault or it's the book fault, but it felt very rushed. It may be just I read it too quickly. I also found that when I started, because I only read volume 5 about a month or 2 ago, when I started this volume, I had to go back and reread volume 5 because I had forgotten things. In terms of plot progression, there isn't that much going on. There is the major thing that's been building up over the series of a conflict between 2 particular characters that finally happens, and it was quite a letdown as to how it happened and how the aftermath, it was very dull and underwhelming. Because the first few books in the series, we build into this huge, expansive world. And then, but as we get down to the later series, they kind of block all of that out, and it becomes less interesting as they do that. They also got rid of, I don't mean kill, they don't appear in this volume. Some characters who are main characters in the first few volumes, they're not shown at all, and they are great characters, and they are some of the most compelling characters in this series, and they're not there at all. There's also, in the previous volumes, the chapters end with a Professor Tam doing a bit of info dumpy world building, but they also give context as to a lot of things and help you understand some of the politics a bit better. The premise of it being that it's this cat who's a professor giving a lecture to some scholars, and so at the end of every chapter there would be one of these lessons in relation to what's previously happened in that chapter, and also giving you some info to help you understand the next chapter. In this volume they didn't have any of that. They had like one, but otherwise they didn't put it there, and I felt like, even though it is kind of info dumpy, I felt like for this series it worked. Overall, I still really love this series. It's probably my favourite series of all time, not just of graphic novels, but all series. So I gave it 4 stars. The next book I read was Fox Hunt by Ren Wigmore. I have spoken about this a little bit in a vlog, but I have now finished it. I gave this one a 4 stars, and I'm kind of conflicted as to whether I like it or not. I'm kind of like, I don't dislike it, but I don't like it that much, and I'm also like, even now that's been like a few weeks, I can't really wrap my head around my thought process about this book. It's kind of comes back to the fact that it feels like there's some stuff just missing from it. I did like the world building and the ideas explored in this about climate and how people could possibly in the future work in a sustainable way and still live in a similar kind of manner to we have now with technology and whatnot. But what made no sense to me was the Order of the Vengeful Wild. We're told at the beginning that this is an order who have kind of replaced the police, but they are also rogue and they don't go anyone's laws or anything, and they punish energy criminals and climate criminals. But we very quickly find out they don't really do that, and they also require 0 proof or evidence that person's committed a crime. You can just say, this person committed a crime, and they're like, okay, I'm gonna go kill them. Everyone else in the book is like, they help bring justice. It's like, well, they don't, because they will just kill anyone for anything. That's not justice. And like the people into the Vengeful Wild have a very holier than thou stance of being that they stop all these criminals and they like prevent the world from becoming evil like it was before. And it's like, you're not though. They kill someone because he was rude at an inn. They go after another character because someone decided to claim they had stolen wood. They hadn't, and they had 0 evidence this person did. They go after the main character for a crime that's never explained what the crime is, and they have 0 evidence of any crime ever being committed, but again they go try and kill them. I don't understand why people respect this order and why people allow this order to still exist when they're just rogue criminals and murderers. And that was my biggest issue with the book. It is very gender diverse in this book. The main character is a trans woman, and there is a lot of non-binary gender fluid people, a lot of people using neo-pronouns. Based on my core part rating, this is a 4 star, but again it's a low 4 star. The 4 stars more for like characters and the world building and the ideas that are explored in this book. But I feel like some of the execution let it down. Now for my most hated book. It was an arc I got from NetGalley of a graphic novel called The Extraordinary Part by Florent Rupert. This book is set in France, and it has these weird alien blobs that just suddenly turned up one day. We're told conflicting things about them. For one thing, we're told they're completely peaceful, and on the other hand we're told they're violent and keep attacking people. And then a sentence later they're like, they're completely peaceful, why do people hate them? Make up your fucking mind. But the thing that really pissed me off was this book was pro-murder, pro-racism, pro-serial killer. It was pro-pedophilia. Every single person in this book is horrible. So the main character, he's the least horrible person, but he ends up agreeing with the horrible people. He meets this girl called Basma at the beginning, and she's portrayed in a way that we're supposed to think she's friendly, but immediately from the beginning we're shown that she does not give a crap about anyone's personal boundaries or anyone's bodily autonomy. She sexually violates a character. No one gives a shit. No one addresses it. They just laugh it off. The main character, who is an adult, makes out and kisses a 13-year-old character, and this 13-year-old character exposes themselves to the adult character. And again, no one sees a problem with this. It's portrayed as it being normal and healthy, but it's also just pro-violence against everyone. One of the characters murders 30 people within the space of a few seconds, and it's okay, they did this because these people were standing there. That's it, they were just standing there. I don't understand how someone thought this was okay to publish. On that extremely depressing note, my favourite book. So the other book that I liked really a lot was also an arc from NetGalley, which is No Gods, No Monsters by Cadwell Turnbull. In this book, monsters are real, like werewolves, vampires and whatnot, but we're at a point where the world is only just learning this, and previously everyone's had to be in hiding and whatnot. Some of the monsters are monsters that we know about and are common in literature, like werewolves, vampires. Others are less common in Western literature, at least, and are based on Caribbean mythology. Others, I'm not entirely sure. I couldn't find a reference when I searched it, so I don't know if they are part of the mythology of some other culture or if the author made them up for this book. The book also, it's very clearly a metaphor for oppression and discrimination against groups like race and sexuality and whatnot. This book was so wonderful. It was written beautifully, and the plot was so intriguing and engaging and had such high stakes going on in it. I also feel like maybe I'm too dumb or maybe too white to understand fully what the author's getting at, but I absolutely loved it. There is going to be more books in this series, so hopefully I learn more and understand it better as it goes on. The book would have a lot of trigger warnings. It starts off dealing with police brutality. It obviously deals with discrimination. There's a lot of murder and gore that happens. There's some body horror that happens. There is domestic violence and drug abuse. It is the kind of book that I very much feel like I need to reread and reread and reread, because I feel like it's the kind of book that each time I would reread it, I would get more out of it. That there's just so much in this book and it has so much to say. And I also feel like it is criminally underrated. I have only heard one person on BookTube talk about this book. The last book I read was Clara and the Sun by Kazu Ishiguro. This was a book for our book club. If you're not aware, Kazu Ishiguro is a Nobel Prize winning novelist. I have not read his works before, but going off of that and going that I know he's an extremely beloved award-winning author, that it would be brilliant. I was let down. I rated this a 3 stars. This book is about an AI or robot. It's called an artificial friend. So they're a robot for children. It starts off with them in a store waiting for someone to buy them. So they're just kind of observing the customers and observing the world around them and trying to learn as much as they possibly can. And it's about their insights into human nature and the world and whatnot. Seeing as this book is about an exploration of human nature, it doesn't say anything that's not been said before and been said about thousands of times, and it doesn't say it in any way that's new or innovative. It's to the point where it's frankly redundant and not necessary. Everyone's already talked about that a billion times over and over and over and over again. And as a result, the book was very dull and didn't have much driving force to it. A big issue I had as well was the dialogue of characters was very stilted and robotic. Now obviously the robots' dialogue, perfectly acceptable for them to have robotics dialogue, but the human characters also spoke like that. They spoke like someone had handed them a script and going, "Hello, how are you today?" It didn't sound natural at all. It may be that because when this is set in the world, it is extremely focused on social status, that maybe people are having to constantly put on a performance and pretend to be extremely civil, kind of reminiscent of Nosedive in Black Mirror episode. It's from the point of view of a robot who is in the private home of a family, and they see their private lives. They are alone with these people. These people don't obviously see this robot as a person, so they're willing and comfortable to talk about anything around them. There should have been times when the characters broke out of that facade, and they never did, so it seems like it was just badly written dialogue. But overall, it was reasonably enjoyable. So that is all the books for this recent reads. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to. Down in the description you will find links to our website, Instagram, Twitter, and Patreon and Discord. Otherwise, we will see you in a video next week from Chris.